Good afternoon. I'm Robin Rains, and I would like to welcome you to the April 23rd, 2022 Design Review Committee meeting. This is a 9-person committee whose primary function is to perform design review for projects located in one of the city's 3 designated design review areas: downtown, the Riverfront, and the new hotel overlay zoning district. This is a mandatory review, voluntary compliance process with one exception for hotels seeking to skip council review. Hotels taking advantage of this incentive must receive a positive recommendation from the committee. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. You can also watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel. We also have an option for the public to listen by phone by calling 855-925-2801 and enter code 9410. When we get to the public comment section, you may dial this same number and press *3. For those with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone and raise your hand. Please remember to mute your phone after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Jeremy Goldstein.
Hello.
Catherine Ankaya.
Hi.
Christina Boer.
Hi.
Kimberly Hunter. Kimberly must not be with us. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Good afternoon.
Brian Moffitt.
Hello.
Ricardo Sejo. Ricardo, I saw him. I know he's here. And I am Robin Rains. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call for each vote if there's a vote to be taken. Additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. We will begin with our administrative items and any unfinished business. The only thing we have under administrative is the approval of the minutes from March 17th, 2022. Did everybody get a chance to review the action items? Do we have motion to approve?
I move we approve the draft action minutes.
Okay.
A second.
All right, then we will move. We need to vote. Okay. We're going to go through a roll call vote. Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye.
Catherine Ankaya.
Aye.
Christina Boer.
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffitt.
Aye.
Ricardo Sejo. Nope. Okay. Robin. Aye. All right. Now we will move on to new business. And today we have 2 projects seeking formal design review. And we will take these cases in the order they appear on the agenda. Staff will kick things off with a short presentation, after which the applicant or their design team members will be invited to speak. Once presentations are done, we will pause to take any public comment. The first item on the formal design review is 21 Governor's View Road, Redwood Commons, and conditional zoning.
And Chair, I think Mr. Goldstein has his hand raised. Do you want to say something, Jeremy?
Sorry, Jeremy.
No, I'm trying to follow the rules and not blurt out.
Sorry.
Procedural question. How many board members need to be present to vote on a formal review? And how many need to approve when it is a mandatory approval?
My understanding is that we have a quorum for this meeting, so we can proceed. And then any members that need to recuse themselves from an item will just be subtracted from the denominator of the vote. So like if we have 8 now, but 2 have to, or even 3 or 4 had to recuse themselves. It wouldn't affect the quorum. It would just be a majority vote based on the remaining members.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, we should be okay. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right, good afternoon. Will Palmquist with Planning and Urban Design. I'll be giving a brief presentation on our first agenda item, which is a design review for a new project located at 21 Governor's View Road. It's located here, as you can see on the aerial image between, see the bottom image is north at the top, so Governor's View Road at the top on the north side of the site, and then Swananoa River Road on the south of the site, next to the existing Aldi, across from Swananoa River where Bleachery Boulevard crosses. The top image shows the view looking in the opposite direction to the south. So you can see Governor's View Road in the foreground. Applicant included some photographs from the area. Total parcel is 2 3/4 acres. Due to the size of the project, which is 70 residential units for senior living apartments, the project is seeking a conditional zoning to the residential expansion conditional zone district, but it is located in the Riverfront Swananoa East Review District, and therefore it's before you today. All right, here you can see a site plan for the area. Access and parking for the project is located off of Governor's View Road. You can see the L-shaped double loaded style building, 4 stories, 70 units, 72,000 total square feet. I'll just point out some other features around the site. Landscaping is pretty much to code, includes things like street trees, buffer screening, building impact screening, parking lot screening. The dumpster is located off to the west of the site. Some site amenities are proposed, including a gazebo, covered picnic area to the south. There's an area that's proposed to be like a raised garden bed for a community garden. And then also the sidewalks that connect down through the site and also connect via a ADA accessible ramp leading down behind the site down to Swananoa River Road. And this would be a new sidewalk segment that would connect to an existing bus stop that's being proposed to be relocated about 200 feet to the west and improved with a bus shelter. Here are just some floor plans of the project. You can see it's kind of a combination of 1 and 2 bedrooms. So now here's the north elevation at the bottom, which faces the parking lot and is the main entrance with this pedestrian awning, a sign proposed over the awning, and then a view of the east elevation. Just highlight some of the materials used. Currently, the proposal is that the primary facade will be vinyl horizontal siding and vinyl board and batten vertical siding, as well as cement board accent panels and a thin stone veneer. You can see the stone veneer a little bit better here on elements of the central bay, and also running along the base of the building. You can kind of see the alternating horizontal and vertical siding proposed to help kind of break up the mass of the building. The applicant has noted east elevation in more detail that they hope to use fiber cement siding as an upgrade to the vinyl siding that's proposed. They are seeking low-income housing tax credits, and just due to the fluctuating prices of materials currently, help keep the overall cost of the project down. They're proposing vinyl, but they will be seeking bids for fiber cement style materials instead, and we'll be comparing that cost. And if it's in the budget, they will prefer to do that. Also, as a long-term maintenance consideration, they would prefer that as well. So as far as looking at some of the elements of the site in regards to the River District Design Review Guidelines, kind of noting that the building uses these differentiated bays to break up the horizontal plane. The dormer roof elements are incorporated into these bays of the building. The rhythm is enhanced with the alternating use of materials. Let's see. Go to the elevations. All right, and here's the south elevation that you would kind of see from looking up from Swananoa River Road, and this is the picnic area awning pictured here, and then the west elevation shown as well. As far as landscape and site plans go, the project includes street trees, a variety of tree species for the different elements of the screening and planting requirements. Highlighted some of the species that are proposed to be used the most, which include serviceberry, red maple, for the sweet gum, black gum. Also a variety of shrub species proposed for retaining wall screening, which there will be retaining walls needed, especially for that path and the ramp down to Swananoa River Road. I mentioned the picnic table and raised planters. The project does add connectivity with the 5-foot wide sidewalk and a 10-foot wide planting strip along Governor's View and Swananoa River roads. 10-foot sidewalks in front of the main entrance from the parking lot, and there are 5-foot wide internal sidewalks throughout the project, as well as the ADA accessible ramp. As far as other project amenities go, there have been no details provided on lighting at this point, and that can be a permitted process later once the project goes through all its approval phases. Noted that the dumpster area is located to the side of the site and will be screened from view by an enclosure. And the only signage proposed at this point is just the lettered sign name of the building above the pedestrian canopy that faces the parking lot at the main entrance. As far as review by other committees, this design review committee reviewed the project informally at its last meeting on March 17th. Overall, the committee noted a few comments which the project responded to in this formal submittal, which includes the massing of the bays and the stair tower and the roof, and how to create rhythm without being repetitive in the design. So this new design was responding to that comment. The possibility of adding details to the stone materials such as lintels, improving access to and from the project from the southeast corner of the site, which is just challenging due to the floodway being located at the southeast corner of the parcel. Utilizing different building materials, planting of trees with a broader branching to alleviate the heat in the parking lot, and then more vegetative coverage along Governor's View Road to reduce mulch in lawn areas, which would perhaps need chemical treatment, and that would then flow into the river. So as much of that could be covered to reduce weeds, the better. The project was also shared with the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission on April 14th. The commission was overall supportive and added a few comments as well, including discussing the selection of the site, which is a big component of the low-income housing tax credit project, and it scored very high in that regard. The market rate in demand and absorption rates for these affordable units, which is the demand is still very high. And even these 70 units would barely scratch the surface of that demand, but it's still very much needed. Income ranges being targeted, which include 30%, 50%, and 60% of AMI, and the preference of the commission as well as the project team to use fiber cement siding instead of vinyl siding in the final project design. Overall, staff supports the proposed building design of Redwood Commons, noting that the design and materials used in the building are generally in keeping with the character of buildings within the Swananoa River East Design District, that the site plan places the building appropriately and provides connectivity for pedestrians and vehicles. The project provides connection through the site to Swananoa River Road, connecting to a future Swananoa Greenway, as well as improves an existing bus stop with a bus shelter, and that the dumpster enclosure is screened adequately. And then staff just concurs that the design could be improved with the addition of indirect site lighting, enhanced building materials, and increased landscaping materials. So that concludes my presentation. We're glad to answer questions. We also have members of the project team with us today as well.
Brian.
Do we need to make any response? We received two of our public comments regarding this project. I can't remember what our protocol is.
I believe they were received ahead of time and sent out and posted on our website. We could acknowledge that they have been received. We don't necessarily need to read them into the record as they are part of the building, the meeting materials already.
They were both relating to the Governor's View Road access and parking. One suggested parking be moved to the backside of the building, and one suggested not to enter on Governor's View Road. Will we take phone public comment after our discussion?
Yeah, before motion is usually the time that we take public comment for folks that are on the phone.
Okay.
One more question before we get into the major discussion. On the bottom left of the image on screen, that's the view that they showed us, or one of the two views they showed us from Swananoa River Road. Do they have one kind of rotated around back towards the Audis, back towards that lot, so I can see what that corner that is the big thing you're going to see on Swananoa River Road, and I want to see what that corner looks like. Am I making any sense? I can see it in elevation and I can build it in my head. I just trying to put it together.
I don't believe there's other renderings provided. I think this view in the center kind of gets to that. It says it's looking towards the east, although I think the corner that you're talking about.
Yeah, I want to rotate around and catch the other side. So if I'm coming from W&C Tile and coming across the stoplight, I want to see what that big corner looks like.
Going towards the west.
Yeah, headed towards tunnel.
I do not believe we have a rendering of that.
The architect could possibly share a screen if they have a Revit model or whatnot. Just a thought.
Look at you talking about Revit models.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it open now. We might be able to do that. I think my bandwidth can handle it.
Stephen Lee.
On that note, could we have the design team that's present acknowledge themselves so we can all know who's here? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Aaron Bowman. I'm an architect and I work with Buckeye Community Hope Foundation, who is the developer. And I believe we have some other members of the design team here as well. I'll let them introduce themselves.
My name is Mary Weber. I've got an echo here. Okay, is that better? Yeah, I'm the landscape architect on the team, and my mic keeps cutting in and out. It'll show it's on, and then it says it's not working, so I keep reloading. So, pardon me for any inconvenience.
Is anyone else here from the design team?
Is the civil engineer on the call? Okay, I guess not. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for the design team?
I was just going to note, sorry to break in, but the rendering on the bottom left does say it's from the west on Swananoa River Road, Brian.
Yeah, I think that one is, I think, looking more straight on. It is sort of shifted a little bit over directly from the intersection. If I understand Brian's question correctly, he's sort of talking about wanting to see what would be the right corner of the mass in the foreground of the image.
Yeah, like I'm not, there was a couple of public comments and they were talking about where the parking was. I actually agree with the move to put the major vehicular access on the other side from Swananoa River, you know, and pull the amenities and everything up to Swananoa River Road. So this is but in my way of thinking, this is the primary corridor and this is the primary elevation. And this building is kind of, at least the piece you've got on screen right now looks like it's kind of turned its back on the primary elevation. There's not a lot of, you've got more articulation on the side facing your parking lot. You've got articulation in the courtyard, but then this piece is not as articulated. And so I'm wondering if that's a artifact of me looking at elevations or me looking at this piece. And then if I swung around, like it looks a lot better in the courtyard view that you've got one up from that. And I'm wondering, there's a little piece that kind of comes off to the side of that. If I'm reading the elevation, let me get my rear azimuth behind me, the east side. Yeah, I think there's another piece like that on that side. Maybe that helps articulate it a bit. Because it looks pretty bland right now, and it's the one closest to Swananoa River Road.
Yeah, I guess to respond to that. So the image, and I'm trying to pull Revit up here now, and I think we could at least spin the model around in a moment. But you are correct. So in the L, the image that's in the middle left on the screen right now, if we could zoom in on that, so the way that you can see, so the volume it's the part of the 2-bedroom units that has the higher sort of belt of stone is on the other side as well. And then there's a change in plane back that then also has the same sort of vertical rhythm element on it. So that, you know, that is repeated along the other side. I think that image is just sort of more dead flat on that south side of that massing. So, I mean, we do have that along the corner. You know, it's not simply sort of flat, and it's not, you know, no windows or, you know, anything like that. We did try to, you know, this is a building that sort of has, you know, kind of 4 fronts, doesn't really have a back, just the nature of where it sits along the site.
Right.
It's visible from all sides. So we certainly tried to pay attention to not having, you know, as we discussed in our previous review, large areas of blank facade or, you know, sort of small fenestration. So we certainly heard that comment and tried to incorporate it in the revised design here.
So to that end, that overall south elevation, that big piece of the L coming at me, you know, you've really got it kind of articulated right in the middle, and then I got blank wall on either side. And it just, it's hitting me wrong right now. I apologize also. I don't think I was able to stay for the informal review last time. But I can already tell you've done a lot of work on it since I last saw this. So to help you articulate a little bit, one of the things you're doing is you're making sure all your eaves line up all the way around the building. And I would actually encourage you to not do that. Because you've got it articulated, and then when I get to the roof, even though I've got gables and stuff, it still feels like a single roof, and it makes the building feel more like a single building. I think if you take those gables and you either drop them a little bit or pop them up a little bit, it's going to really start to articulate that it's going to feel more like different masses than one big mass. That would be my first suggestion, and then the second one would be do a little bit more on this piece of the L that's coming out towards Swananoa River Road, in how it's articulated and in how maybe it's just fenestration, maybe it's materials. I'm not sure, but that piece just looks a little bit less developed than I'm looking around the elevations of the rest of the building.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you for the comments. And I guess just to maybe sort of back up to maybe and talk a little bit. I know most, if not all of you, were with us last month when we had the informal review, which we greatly appreciated that opportunity. After that meeting, I was able to meet with Sasha and Will and talk through some of the comments received and sort of understand this process a little more. And as Will said, we also met with the Riverfront Commission and appreciated the opportunity to hear their comments on the same package that you're looking at. So at the informal review, we had a lot of discussion about materials, and we certainly understand the comments and concerns about vinyl siding. And, as Will said, our preference is we would really prefer for that to be fiber cement siding. One of the things that we talked about last time in our review is that we have a few other projects currently that are experiencing just a lot of challenges with material and cost escalation, and are, essentially in other jurisdictions, but went through a design review process and now have budget issues and are trying to walk it back. So we're sort of trying to proactively say, this would be our base and this is our preferred option. And so certainly happy to talk about that further. But, we also heard comments on the roof line and the massing of the building, where we had this sort of L-shaped footprint that was sort of symmetrical, but not really differentiated. So within the overall massing, we were able to adjust the plan and sort of shift some of the unit locations. So we maintained our unit count and unit types. It's still primarily 1-bedrooms, but also a mix of 2 bedrooms. But we were able to reconfigure them in a way that's essentially not trying so hard to be symmetrical, but trying to create a rhythm across the facade. One of the other comments that we heard was, in the previous version, the entry was not really differentiated, that it should read stronger, I guess, in elevation. It should have a greater prominence along the elevation. And so in reworking the massing, you can see the sort of higher gable and the kind of double vertical mass along with the stone accent that we've added there. And then still sort of maintaining this idea of basically where we have these 2-bedroom units that are larger. We have the higher course of stone to sort of give that a little bit of massing and sort of anchor that in. And then we have the roof on the sort of 1-bedrooms as it moves over and kind of around the building. We did sort of look at the heights of the stone and sort of where those accents were. Part of our design requirements is a sort of continuous base of a masonry material, which, as we discussed last time, we're proposing this thin stone veneer in lieu of brick, because we feel that it's more appropriate for the site and context. Some of the other comments that we heard last time were questions about, we did talk a little bit about the parking location and the building orientation and how we arrived here, and our preference to have the sort of active spaces of the site along Swananoa River, where we have some sort of walking trails, sidewalks, fully accessible, that sort of wrap the site. There are outdoor spaces like a gazebo. We do have the community garden, which you can see in the foreground here, which are raised beds, and a small sort of picnic shelter. And so, this area, sort of landscaping around it, some of the pathways have all been, further refined to kind of define that a little bit more. Worked with Mary to sort of articulate the landscaping a little bit better to give a feel for what that would be along the road. And then, we also heard some questions about the experience along Swananoa, as we are elevating the site due to floodplain considerations. And we had talked about the southeast corner and just, the desire for, we're shifting the what is currently just a bus stop, just a sign, no shelter. We're shifting it to the west to move it out of the floodplain, the FEMA designated floodplain. So we do still have a sidewalk, that connects all the way across, does hit the intersection at Aldi, which will connect over to the Greenway and beyond. But I think those were the primary comments that we received last time, and sort of the major changes that we've put in here to try to address them. And so with that, I'll say any other additional questions.
Buckeye?
Yes, we're in just a separate office than Aaron, but we work with Aaron. We just wanted to let you know that initially at one of the first meetings, I believe it was transportation had directed us to not have the access off of Swananoa River Road. And I think also because of the floodplain where nothing could be built there. Our initial design was to come off Swananoa, but that got pretty much canceled from the get-go. So that's why all of the loading and entryways come from Governor's View Road now.
Catherine?
Hi, thank you. I have a quick question about the retaining wall along Swananoa River Road. It's, I think, 9 feet at its highest. What is that material?
At this time, what we're anticipating is something that would be a sort of segmented block wall that's similar to what's at the Aldi that's adjacent immediately. And there's a photo of that on maybe the first page, I think. But yeah, I mean, I know I think 9 feet at the highest is, I don't know if it's quite that. I thought it was closer to 5 to 6, but I'd have to sort of double check the grades. And but that's what we're intending. And a lot of this right now, we're at a pretty early kind of schematic design level, frankly. So there are a lot of details that we haven't worked out, and material selections haven't been made because a lot of our actual design work, I know typically projects that are coming up for review are at a sort of mid-design development phase. We're certainly much earlier than that because we have to have zoning in place before we can even apply for funding. So once we sort of get that step, there's a whole other, series of construction document development phases that we'll have to do to get there.
Sure. Well, I guess my only comment would be that in those areas where it is taller than others, if thinking about the landscaping, I know Mary will do that, just where we can, help to mitigate that tall face of the wall with plants would be nice. And then, with the renderings, they're really helpful, but they're also, a little misleading, just like from the landscape point of view, just like, I see, maybe you could scroll up, just that entry. I see, lots of plants filling those tree islands, but on the landscape compliance plan, like that's not really accurate. So just wanting to make sure that, we can all read plans from, the designers, from our experience, but the public and other people, they're really going to be relying on these renderings. So just making sure that, that they match what the plans show would be really helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I think, that's a good point. We tend to do these. I mean, even the trees, day one, these are certainly more mature trees than are going to be, installed. So yeah, we do tend to show it as though it's sort of grown out. So apologies for any confusion in that. And Mary can certainly chime in, but I think we do have at least some, additional low plantings in some of these tree islands. They might not exactly match.
No, I don't think they have to match like specifically to the species or anything, but just making sure that they correspond to, what is proposed. And then I have one more question about that is in the rendering, I see that second rendering down on the left, it's very grassy in there, not just on the street side, but on the interior between the sidewalk and the wall. And just wondering, are you proposing that be some sort of lawn or ground cover planting, or will that be mulch?
Well, go ahead, Mary. Yeah.
Are you, so the area between the sidewalk and the street would be grass. And then, so I have quite a few shrubs along the retaining wall for screening. And yeah, we haven't really gotten to that level. You know, at this point, we're really just trying to meet the landscape ordinance. But I certainly appreciate your point. I don't know. I think using ground covers there, that is a very challenging area just because it's hot and dry and against a south facing wall. So trying to keep things alive are going to be really
Sure,
challenging.
I get it. I just, you know, when I see that, it's just like, wait a second, am I reading the plan wrong? And so just to say that if that was a brown mulch planting area with small shrubs in it, it would look very, very different along Swananoa River Road. And that's not good or bad. It's just that it's helpful to know like what we're doing. And so that's all.
I anticipate the mulched area would just be around the plants, but not extending all the way, and the rest would be grass.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Ricardo and then Stephen Lee.
Can you hear me now? All right, sorry about that. Apparently there's more than one way to mute this thing. I just wanted to circle back on the public comment. They had also asked about, and we had the same comments before, but they also asked about the Bleachery Road extension, which isn't really an extension. And I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that, you know, that's really part of the Aldi property, and it's not really something that the project could use. So on the just looking at the site plan, I noted that there's a 10-foot sidewalk along the entire front, and that, you know, wide sidewalks are great in, you know, like a downtown environment, but it seems like a large expanse of sidewalk for a project like this. And I'm wondering if, you know, that could be reduced. Is there some sort of requirement for that? Could that be reduced? And then also on the east side, I see that there's a path, you know, there's that sidewalk. Wondering if that sidewalk could be pulled away from the building a little bit, because I'm actually a little bit, you know, I had some thoughts about that elevation. When you look at the elevation, that is probably it is the single biggest wall, and to me that, you know, that wall could use some relief. When I look at the floor plan, it looks like there's a natural break where you could pop that wall out, you know, a little bit, you know, make a break in it. But at the very least, it would also, you know, be helpful to have some plantings in front of that as well, which, you know, we're pulling that sidewalk away from the building. It gives you some room.
So originally the sidewalk was further away from the building, and I requested that it be moved closer to the building because there's a steep slope that starts pretty quickly. And I was also trying to fit in as many trees to meet the tree canopy ordinance as possible on that slope. And it just seemed like we had this very large planting area between the building and the sidewalk that's too small to put trees. So that's why I request that move back. And in terms of foundation landscaping, we don't have a lot at this point because, again, we're just trying to meet the UDO and then come back later as budget allows and add more. So at this point, I focused foundation plantings around all the doorways. And then also on that property line, you'll see the smaller trees close to the sidewalk. Those are screening trees like hollies and little gem magnolias. And that was really to help with screening of the parking lot and grocery store next door.
Okay. So, but yeah, so my comment on that elevation is, like I said, if I look at the floor plan, it looks like there's a natural break at the wall of those bedrooms there that maybe something could shift or something could happen to break that up a little bit. But I think, you know, where the way that facade faces, you know, it's not the most prominent view, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But I did want to say, so to Brian's point, you know, when I look at the old elevations, you know, what we reviewed during the informal review, you see that there is actually more articulation, and in that sense, the old elevations or the old roof line was more successful in that it broke that line up, like Brian was suggesting. Now, you know, there was a change in the pitch direction and all of that stuff, so we had talked about fixing that. But I agree that, you know, we've got this sort of big roof that just sits over the whole thing. The pitch, you know, if we're doing these gables, you know, we've got a mix of gabled and hip roof, which it seems a little bit unclear right now. And then the vertical, sort of single vertical elements marching along the facade, the pitch on those gables is different than on the main, over the main entrance. And I don't know if you guys have explored, you know, normalizing those, making those the same, obviously not the same size, but the same pitch. And then the stone, we had also talked about that, and I think this is an improvement, because the way that stone was coming up to the bottom of I can't remember which window it was, you know, sort of choking that window, and this feels better. It gives that window, you know, relief all the way around, so I think it's an improvement. But you still just have 2 datums for that stone, and I think this could, you know, this maybe could be improved if there were 3. So we have where, you know, in this elevation where you have the white, I guess that's siding, you know, you have the low water table, where you have the narrow siding, you know, almost like little towers here. You could come up to the 2nd floor, and then where you have the corners and the main entrance, you could maybe even bring that down to the 3rd floor. So you have 3 datums marking, you know, your sort of in between. You still maintain your water table, your masonry material water table, and then you're coming up 1 level and then coming up 2 levels to mark the 3 different volumes, or 3 different parts of the volume that you have. And honestly, I think you might find that that's actually a little bit less stone. So I think what I'm proposing is not going to add cost.
Yeah, I think that's something we can, you know, continue to study. I think it's, you know, it's a good comment to, I guess, provide a little bit more, you know, articulation, I think is the word that I keep hearing.
Yeah.
So I guess, and, you know, just to respond to a few of the other comments. Yeah, the last time we did have, you know, a few, I think the stair towers and maybe just the entry were things that sort of broke the roof line, and there was discussion about sort of leveling it out, and you know, in between sort of that and the discussions about the prominence, the entry, you know, we sort of landed on this single datum. But again, I take the point that for a vertical element to have a greater emphasis on the massing, extending it above the roof line would certainly help. So, you know, that's something we can look at. You know, the differing roof pitches, you know, with the hip roofs are all on the sort of larger, more prominent areas. So, you know, as a gable, they just, you know, simply overpower the adjacent roof lines. You know, it's something we've looked at. You know, potentially could we go to flat roofs in some areas? I think, you know, being early in design, that's something that may still be on the table to help alleviate that. But, you know, at, you know, the height of the building at 4 stories at a pedestrian level, the hip roof is a low enough slope that it recedes fairly well. But obviously from surrounding directions, you know, you would sort of perceive that mass and as a different roof form. But, you know, trying to sort of balance that, having a steeper slope at the entry, again, just to sort of give it more visual prominence was the idea that we were sort of studying through this. But I think, you know, a lot of great comments about sort of materials and massing and things that I think, you know, we can certainly continue to study. And, you know, I think I agree that, you know, we have stone on larger massing, pulling that down, adding it on smaller massings, you know, it probably is close to a wash. So I think that's a relatively easy study for us to pursue. And I think that was everything that you had commented on. Sorry.
Stephen.
Actually, in the interest of time, I'm going to not have any comment. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments? Christina?
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, and reiterating a couple of comments that would have already been made, but I think on the east elevation and on the south facing elevation, those large blocks of stone are both at the end of your circulation paths. And so I think that creates an opportunity to break up the material there. And I think that would help with the articulation.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Thomas?
Hello. I've tuned in a little late. I'm the civil engineer representing McGill and the owner. If anybody has any specific questions that I may have missed as I tuned in late, I'd be glad to, you know, field anything that relates to the civil scope. That is.
Thank you. If anybody else, if no one else has any comments, do we have any public input?
Sure, we do not have any callers.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I can make a motion, but did want to just bring up one comment for everyone's consideration. And I know there's a desire for the siding not to be vinyl, and there's a, you know, the reality of cost. And this was discussed at the AARRC as well, but are there any alternative low-cost options besides vinyl that people would prefer? Is vinyl the appropriate material to use? That's just, I mean, I'm very cautious about saying you must use this material or that material. I feel like that doesn't seem to be reasonable, but you know, if it's not required, it may not happen, and I understand why. That's just my only thought, and I can make a motion and we can continue discussion. But I'm happy to, you know, I would move to recommend approval of the Redwood Commons project as presented based on the site plans, elevations, and materials submitted in discussions heard during this review, and find that the project meets the intent of the River District Design Review Guidelines. And if there are any friendly conditions, I'm open to that as well. But that's the motion as it stands now.
Brian, did you have a comment?
I was actually going to ask the Riverfront folks who know their guidelines better than I do what their guidelines allow in this part of the Riverfront district. I've been combing through them and I'm not finding what I'm looking for. Are there requirements for specific types of materials in this part of the Riverfront?
I mean, I'm on the commission and I'm certainly no expert, but it tends to flow with what's in the surrounding areas. So different sections of the river have different materials that are acceptable versus not. So I would think in this more industrial area, that may be an acceptable material. But
Yeah,
it's
there's
not
less rec-
hard and fast. It has to be A, B, C, and D. It's sort of fitting into the fabric.
Yeah, this area of the riverfront has the least amount of requirements, so to speak. It's more just about what's in line with existing and the industrial quality, and does it reflect the riverfront? It's very general.
Aaron?
Thanks. Just to offer for the discussion as well, some of our choices are somewhat limited by the funding that we're pursuing. So allowable materials include masonry. So, that could be, again, as we discussed, the sort of brick or stone. Wood siding is not allowed. They specifically do not allow metal siding, which has traditionally been interpreted as metal panels. But I think that would be probably equally difficult from a budget perspective. We certainly couldn't be looking at, some sort of corrugated panel. That's sort of specifically what they're trying not to get. And then stucco is an option. We have a lot of concern about stucco over frame, particularly over 4 stories, which would be a lot. And then we have sort of siding. So again, for vinyl, it's the thicker gauge vinyl, like 0.45, I think, or 47 is North Carolina's standard. We would certainly look at also insulated vinyl, which not only helps with our energy, but has a similar sort of foam backing to what an insulated metal panel would have. So it has a greater rigidity, does better over time. There are also PVC and other composite siding options that we can look at that I think typically can come in lower than fiber cement. So there are options that we can explore, and if we need to sort of revisit that, as Jeremy had suggested, or have some sort of conditions as this project moves forward for additional review, because we're certainly not at a point that we're close to permitting or anything like that. So we're open to those discussions if that helps. Thank you.
Christina?
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a paragraph or sentence in the river design guidelines that say, talk about using materials in a creative way. And I do think, using the vinyl siding vertically creates some interest that is definitely not something we see typically. And I think it's a vast improvement from the original design.
I agree with that. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Were we going to add any conditions for any, I think he said he would entertain friendly conditions. Do we have conditions? I want to know what I'm seconding first.
Right.
I would like to make conditions that they incorporate the changes made by Ricardo regarding the I'm sorry, Ricardo, I'm going to get this wrong. The bringing in more articulation in the heights of the different materials on the elevations. I would also like to make a condition that they investigate and articulate the eave heights of the different roof elements. And then, Catherine, did we answer your questions on the retaining wall and plantings sufficiently? Do we need any conditions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay. If I missed anything, those are the substantial ones that I think I heard.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe that big wall, maybe playing with that big wall to break it up
Thank you.
From
And-
east elevation.
Yeah.
Correct. Very good. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Robin. Okay, those would be my conditions, and with those conditions, I would like to make a second.
Yeah, I'd amend my motion to include those conditions.
Okay, Brian, did you second? You did?
Yes, that was my intent.
All right. Let's just make sure. Okay, then we'll do the roll call vote now. Jeremy,
Aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Stephen Lee,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and Ricardo,
Aye.
and I will also say aye. So with that, this project is approved with conditions, and we will move on to the next piece on our formal design review, which is 31 Artful Way. It's a level 2 project. Yes, Jeremy. Yeah.
As I am the applicant, I have to recuse myself from the discussion, I guess, on that side of the table.
And Christina as well.
Yes, I'm also recusing myself.
Okay.
As am I.
Okay. So Jeremy, Christina, Stephen Lee are recusing themselves, so that leaves Catherine, Brian, Ricardo, and myself. Correct? Okay.
And that's a quorum. We're okay to proceed?
We have a quorum, and so when you recuse yourselves, it's just a majority of those who are voting, is my understanding from the I looked at the, whatever our rules are called. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Get this ready to go here. Alrighty. So this review is for a application for a new building called Artful Way, located at 31 Artful Way. It's a level 2 project, so it does not require a rezoning. It is located in the Riverfront design area, more specifically the the Klingman Depot Street Design Sector District. The zoning is RAD NT, which is River Arts Form District hyphen neighborhood transition. Since there is a hotel use proposed, as the project is located in a overlay allowing for small hotels, which are those with 35 guest rooms or fewer, it is coming before the design review committee and would not need city council approval if it were to receive a favorable recommendation from this committee. So just some more, I'll keep here for now, some more details about the project. It is proposed at 4 stories from the Artful Way elevation, 6 stories total, which includes the parking garage beneath those 4 stories of building. So the address is on Artful Way, and there will be a strong pedestrian entrance and connection along that road. However, the vehicular access is from Klingman Avenue Extension, where a driveway will come in and connect to the garage entrance with an internal ramp to get to the 2nd story. There's also a pedestrian entrance proposed from that 1st story as well. Further down on Artful Way is a bridge that has a low weight ability, so it's not a viable vehicular access point from Artful Way as far as like fire truck access. So fire truck and delivery trucks, Klingman Avenue Extension is going to be accessed for that. Let's see. As far as like the breakdown of how the building is proposed to be used, it's a mixed use with 34 residential units. They'll be for rent, 27 lodging units, and about 1,500 square feet of retail and office space. The parking structure contains 42 total spaces below the building. As I mentioned, the pedestrian access will be at the first level, Clingman Avenue Extension, as well as the third level on Artful Way. And as far as the proposed materials go, kind of varying shades of gray, corrugated metal panels and fiber cement panels. The parking garage is mainly composed of concrete with black mesh screen panels. And then signage, doors, and the fixed window frames are highlighted in a color called exuberant pink. So then displaying some of the details about the project in regards to the Riverfront, the River District Design Review Guidelines. The proposed building is designed in a manner that relates to the surrounding riverfront area by utilizing corrugated metal siding, fiber cement siding, and concrete. The building has a flat roof and irregular bays that project off the main building facade. Windows are spaced at regular intervals with a variation in mullion pattern. Vertical articulation of the building is accentuated with the placement of the fixed windows and the staggering of the gray fiber cement panels. Horizontal articulation is achieved with the proposed corrugated metal panel color shades, and the overall form relates to the older industrial buildings nearby, as well as the recently constructed Radview building just to the south of the project site. As far as landscape and site plans go, there are a number of landscape elements such as street trees, parking deck screening, retaining wall screening, and other elements such as the proposed green screen on the parking deck elevation, which you can see here and here, as well as a green roof proposed on top of that parking deck, which is the internal ramp to the second level. Let's see. Go to this one for a second. As far as the sidewalks and connectivity go, the project will provide a new 8-foot wide sidewalk on Artful Way and a 6-foot wide sidewalk on Clingman Avenue Extension. A 4-foot wide sidewalk will provide pedestrian access from Clingman Avenue Extension to the first floor pedestrian entrance of the building. Sidewalk will be constructed of concrete in a square scoring pattern as appropriate for the district. And a pedestrian plaza with shading and benches is proposed along Artful Way between that new sidewalk and the building. The plans don't indicate lighting at this point. The dumpster area is located to the rear of the site, past the entrance to the parking garage, and will be screened from view by an enclosure. Project proposes 2 wall-mounted signs with the building's name. One is arranged vertically in the recess of the west facade, the other arranged horizontally near the building's pedestrian entrance at Artful Way, and a third wall-mounted vertically oriented sign is proposed to identify the parking garage entrance. All signs are proposed to be in the same pink color used to accent the other elements of the building. So the project was reviewed informally by this committee at its last meeting on March 17th. Committee and the applicant discussed a number of items, including that the rooftop mechanical units would be screened by the parapet roof and the placement of the units, as well as the fact that this is one of the higher points in the area. So not much opportunity to see those units from any higher points around. There's some discussion about the arrangement and the use of the color gradients of the metal siding and all the different options that the applicant and architect have looked at. throughout designing the project. Encouraging the project to retain the authentic, high-quality landscape elements proposed, as well as adding larger canopy trees than currently proposed, and also the possibility of a future pedestrian connection from the end of Artful Way to Haywood Road. And kind of get a sense, maybe in this rendering, it looks a lot closer than it really is in this rendering, but Artful Way does dead end, and then Haywood Road is it's 50 feet or 100 feet away, but it is there. It's just there's no right of way to it or easy connection, but that would be a great pedestrian connection in the future for residents and visitors alike. The project was also shared with the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission on April 14th. The commission discussed with the applicant a number of items as well, such as that the project does not contain affordable housing, but it will have to supply public benefits for its hotel use as outlined in the Unified Development Ordinance. That the project has received support by the neighborhood and to see more activity in the area and people living here, as it's currently a little bit of a no man's land, as you can kind of get a sense for in the photos of the existing conditions, the burned down house that's been demolished. So it will definitely increase activity to the area. Also the fact that the hotel units are designed with kitchens and can be converted to residential units in the future. And the timeline of the overall project, which would have a summer 2022 start date, presumably, and then with the completion in early 2024. So staff supports the proposed building design of the Artful Way, recommends approval as the project is in alignment with requirements and the intent of the guidelines for the following reasons. The design and materials used in the building, such as the corrugated metal panels, are in keeping with character buildings within both the core of the River District and the Clingman Depot Street Design District. The site plan places the building appropriately and provides connectivity for pedestrians and vehicles, and the dumpster enclosure is screened adequately. And staff just notes that the design could be improved with the addition of indirect site lighting. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions. We also have the project applicant, architects, and keeping the site designer with us here today as well.
Thanks, Will. Does anybody from the project team have anything to add at this point?
Sure. Hi, my name's Laura Hudson, and I'm the architect involved with the project. And you probably remember last month, we took a look at this and some suggestions were made. And so I wanted to kind of give you an overview of what we looked at and what we kind of landed on as far as how we modified some of this design. First of all, we were starting with a very kind of the gradients that went for the 4 floors were high in contrast from lightest to dark. And we have brought that down probably 50% so that the gradient it stays dark and it's much more subtle. So it never reaches those lighter values. And I really like this for a couple reasons. First of all, the gradient, it's more subtle. It doesn't read so much like the starkness of those layers. And it provides more contrast for the lighter fiber cement panels at the stairs. And we looked at reversing that, going darker with the fiber cement panels, but you lose some of the articulation, that kind of that texture. If you remember, we're using 3 different textures of the same color of fiber cement. And we were afraid we'd kind of lose some of the shadowing if we went too dark. So we stayed light with our fiber cement and then darkened that gradient at the metal panel. In addition, we played a little bit with some of the bands are not completely consistent. One of the bands we've raised it a little bit taller. It's very subtle, but you know it's interesting. And then and also we started to look at the metal panels themselves. So rather than using the same kind of panel profile, we've looked at a different product. We were using something that was an exposed fastener. Now we're looking at a concealed fastener, something made by Morin. And what's great about this is there's about 5 profiles that all work together. And as you kind of play with them and put them together, you can really start to create some variety along the facade. And I mean, we didn't want to get too busy, but this, again, we're trying to play with these kind of like subtle textural moments that add some interest to the facade. So Will, do you mind going well, actually on this image, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that image we didn't change. And you can see that the real contrast and how the gradient goes from like 100% to 0. And now down in the other right-hand corner, you see we're going 100% to 50%. And it's just, you know, you get to read some of that gradient, but it's just a much more subtle change. Then if you wouldn't mind going to the page where we included some projects from some other kind of precedent images. No, there was another one. There you go. Here we were taking a look a little bit at the massing, and so you can see kind of the textural changes in the fiber cement panel, and then over there, I think there's some Marlin Blackwell projects where you can see those same metal panels are used, and it creates this really nice kind of vertical facade, and it moves around a little bit because of the different panel profiles. And then we also included a few just kind of this massing, and we are keeping the windows somewhat regular. I know a lot of people like to play and move them around the facade, but it just got too busy, and we are trying to stack our units. And so we kind of liked the strength of lining up our windows on this one. And just kind of in contrast to a lot of the residential type projects that are being built, some of them even in the River District, they tend to be very, sometimes can be very suburban and in their massing and their detailing. Smaller windows, residential style. These are storefront and they're floor to ceiling. Instead of using like a low density fiber cement or stucco, we're really trying to pull in more urban, longer lasting materials, the metal panel and the high density fiber cement and concrete. So, I mean, that's kind of just where we've been focusing on the design since we last talked. And I don't think we had really, I mean, that was the bulk of the changes. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Laura. We did have one public comment, and it was regarding the entrance, moving the entrance to Artful Way and less parking, but I think we covered that last time. So I'm going to ask the committee if anybody has any questions or comments. I really like the gradation change. I think it's an improvement, and I really like what you've done. I think that all the changes you made are making the project look better.
Great.
Ricardo?
Thank you. Yeah, this is, I mean, this is still great. I can't decide if I hear you on the way that you're, you know, switching that contrast around. I can't decide which one I like better, but you know, that's a good problem to have. A couple of things on the site plan, that sidewalk or crosswalk, I guess, is there, that axis is coming in fairly level, right? There's not a huge grade change there. I would suggest taking that and, you know, racing and maybe widening it a little bit and racing it just to make it something that, you know, somebody driving in a car isn't gonna, you know, fly through. You know, kind of, you know, improving the safety of anybody who's actually trying to cross on it, and creating an accent. You know, it's an opportunity to create an accent as well. On the I know you're trying to get your accents of color. I think the parking sign is a little bit, it's pretty big, it's pretty prominent, and granted it's a, you know, it's down there and it's not really something that's going to be that visible, but especially if this is something that's going to light up, I would suggest, you know, maybe like a P in a circle or something like that, something that's a, universal symbol for parking. So it's not quite so big, because right now it's almost as big as the sign for the building itself. The sign for the building itself, I would like to see a place for it. It's just sort of floating around. It's not really anchored. It'd be nice if there was a way to create a place for it so that, as you're coming in, it's not just sort of floating wherever on the facade near the door. One question, I also like the improvement on the screening for the garage. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot more deliberate. It just looks better. The metal the metal panel, I know the Morin product that you're talking about, and it's great. I mean, it's going to give you so much opportunity to play with. The black band, the bottom band, that one is sort of allowed to flutter a little bit as you go around the building, because you're dealing with like different parts, different masses coming in and meeting it. And where it's at that corner with the circular window, I'm wondering if there's, if I look at the floor plan, it looks like is that going to be like a lounge or a restaurant or a bar or a cafe or something like that?
It is the lobby area that's kind of at the entrance. It is, and it has kind of some booths on either side, and it's this, yeah.
So when you look at if you can switch to the, actually, if we can look at let me see, be the west and the south, no, sorry,
North.
West and north. So that's that corner there. Sorry, no, on the elevations, Yeah, so those two on the right. If instead of bringing that metal panel down at that point, and I know, you're trying to complete that full gradient, but maybe on this side, we just don't. And we do that on the back where that bottom band is allowed to flutter more freely. But here, I think that there's an opportunity here to open that up. If you made that glass or more, more open, because when I look at the material, at the fiber cement, you've got fiber cement that's on the north elevation. That's fiber cement, right? Next to that, to the opening.
It is. Could you zoom in a little bit, Will, to that north side, that area that he's talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you got that fiber cement coming in. So that and the glazing there, those are interrupting the metal panel band, right? You've got the metal panel coming in from the left in this image. Then you got the metal panel on the front, but it gets interrupted by that fiber cement and by that glazing. So I think that there's an opportunity there where if you take that metal panel on the front and just make it glazing or make it fiber cement with openings, you can open that up more, so where you have that lobby area, in your renderings you're showing, and in the site plan, you're showing, like a tree out there and some plantings and whatever, and there's an opportunity there to take that space and open it up more to the outside, and then just clarify where that metal panel is being interrupted anyway, and it's just sort of living there by itself.
You can't really see, there's a lot of change in plane happening around here. I know we talked about some color blocking. I typically don't like to change materials unless I'm changing plane. So the fibers, so if you go to the north elevation, you can see the 3 stories in metal panel, they're proud and they pop out. The metal panel, the fiber cement and glass below are actually inward of the adjacent metal panel. Again, they are changing planes.
Sure.
And so where the metal panel from the west side wraps around to the north, it is very proud. So I almost want to show you a little 3D view just to see how
you've got it. If you go to D4 if you go to D4.0, Will, one more, the bottom right hand, right there, zoom in on that guy.
There you go, kind of. Okay, there we are. So you can see the metal panel on the left is wrapping in, and the metal panel on the right is wrapping in. So it's almost like that the fiber cement from the west side is scooting in and under. It's always behind the metal panel. That's kind of like the rule. Does that make sense? And so if you go back to that west facade, we really liked bringing part of that that front down to meet the ground right there, you know, rather than have the entire thing hovering over the ground floor. We wanted to anchor that left side corner and bring some of that dark metal to the west facade, the front elevation down. And so the fiber cement and the glass are all recessed back. That corner is proud on both edges, and then it tucks back again when we switch back to glass and fiber cement. That sounds really convoluted, I know, but
no, it makes sense. And I was reacting to the elevation, because when you zoom into that corner on the north elevation, that looks like it's fiber cement down at the bottom there, not metal panel.
Well, that is on the right there, but on the right side, that's metal panel. Like, you can't really see it, but we have a trellis structure, and on the right side, that is metal panel coming down, dark. So, and then it steps back. So every time, you know, the rule is as we change, you know, go back to a different plane, that triggers the change in material.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, Will, can you go to D 3.0 and then zoom in on the lower left-hand side, the northwest? So this is a different view of that same thing. So it looks like where she's got the round window, that's in the same plane, and then it steps back as it goes around the corner.
Unfortunately, the rendering is not as updated as the elevations. You know how you never can get them quite at the same. So in our models now, that metal panel wraps back about 6-8 feet and creates that corner, and then steps back to fiber cement.
Laura, would it be help to show them the Revit model? Or
I mean, you know, I certainly could. I mean, for anyone watching, it's going to look very unfinished and, you know,
just if you'd like to see it, she can
less impressive, but I certainly could.
How does it work in the plan? Yeah, I'm not making sense of it in the plan.
May I share? Would you guys mind? Okay. All right, here it is. As you can see, we're coming around, and this is all recessed, this area, this entire L shape that comes up, down, and back. This steps forward, and then as you wrap around, it's in plane, and then it steps back again. And we're always, like I said, we're always moving the facade when we change plane. And so if you wanted to see that in floor plan, as you come in, this is the piece that pops out.
Yeah, no, that's what I was expecting. But like I said, in that elevation, it just looks like it looks like fiber cement. It doesn't look like the metal panel coming down.
This would have metal all the way around it. Then this facade changes back to the glass fiber cement. We pop out and go back to metal. Same down here. This is the glass, but that's because we have overhanging with the metal panel on this.
No,
side.
that makes sense. That makes sense. It's it's just that bit in the elevation that, you know, it looks like it's not, it's probably just not updated. But yeah, if you're bringing that metal panel all the way down and completing that corner, then
that was the idea. Rather than have it just floating, we wanted to bring it back enough and return it back so that it kind of anchored that area.
Yep. No, never mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments? Do we have any public comment?
Sure, we do not have any callers.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Now,
I move to recommend approval of the Artful Way project as presented based on site plans, elevations, and materials submitted and discussions heard during this review. And I find that the project meets the intent of the River District Design Review Guidelines. Do we have any conditions? So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, we'll do the roll call votes. I'll only call out the people who are not abstaining. Catherine,
Aye.
Stephen Lee, no, Brian,
Aye.
Ricardo,
Aye.
and me, aye. Is that that's everybody, right? Okay, all right, then this project is approved and we can move on to the informal design reviews. We have two
Thank
projects.
you, everyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you also just for the feedback last time, because I think that was
Yeah.
very
It
helpful.
was.
We have two projects for informal design review today. The first one is 226 Hilliard Avenue. It's conditional zoning.
Yeah, and Chair, I'd be happy to allow the applicant to present information. I'm also able to as well. I believe Warren Sugg is on the line for this project. Just
Yeah,
to get some.
actually, Will, I'm gonna take this one. Thank you very much, and really appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you guys on an informal basis. We're just getting started on this project, and I'm joined with Brian Slevar, the architect on this, and I've let him know, as well as my client, just the value that coming to these informal meetings can provide, especially as we've got a project. We're in the central business district, right there along Hilliard Avenue, across from the hotspot that has just closed, as well as the recently approved micro housing project. So this is directly across the street from that, and I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, share screen. So yeah, as I was saying, this is the old Hayes and Lunford building. The hotspot sits here, as well as the micro housing project here. We're at the corner of Hilliard Avenue and Ashland, and we are proposing a residential building, primarily residential building, with approximately 230 units, with an internal parking garage of about 250 units. This is the kind of the existing conditions that are out there. And then the proposed residential building, we have, you can kind of see here silhouetted in the background, an internal parking garage, and with the building kind of got a long geometry, as well as some topo that we deal with. We've got about 8 feet of topo change along Hilliard Avenue, and then we've got about 10 along Ashland Avenue, and it's kind of maximized over here at about 20, little over 20 feet of elevation change along the west side. The parking access we are proposing is internal, and will align with Grove Street on this side. We do also butt up against South Grove Street, which goes down into the South French Broad neighborhood. However, we're proposing that this would be used for service, but no vehicular access from the project would go out. We're not looking to add vehicles or traffic along South Grove Street. We are, though, we've pulled this building. We had a pre-application meeting with the city, and the building was a little further to the west. We've actually pulled that off of the west facade. We've got, with the geometry, I think we've got a minimum of 20 feet here, and it gets a little wider down on the south end. But that gives us two two opportunities here. One is to maintain an existing City of Asheville minor water line that goes through here. So we're going to look to reroute it and allow it to continue the connection point that serves South Grove Street to Hilliard. But then that also creates an opportunity for multimodal connectivity. So while we're not looking to have vehicles, cars coming down through here, we are going to propose that path become for bikes and pedestrians to connect Hilliard to the South French Broad neighborhood. Speaking of the geometry of the project, we've got 100-foot right-of-way on Ashland and about 54 feet along Hilliard. But with the way the angles are, it creates kind of a larger pedestrian area there at the corner across from the hot spot. And let me flip through a couple more of these slides. This is a utility plan kind of showing where we're maintaining that connectivity. And then into some of the stuff that you guys are more interested in. This is the facade along Ashland Avenue, looking at the shorter side of the building. And kind of in front of these larger windows would be that corner that I spoke to, having kind of a larger pedestrian area. Once again, on this side of the road, we've got 100-foot right-of-way along this facade. And then this is the Hilliard Avenue. So we are rather long, just the geometry of the parcel. This opening here would indicate our access under the building into the parking garage and would align with Grove Street to the north. And this is representative of the grade change that we've got coming along this side. We do have, I'll let Brian Slevar speak in just a second about more on the architectural aspects of the building, but I wanted to point out that we've got, looks like about 56 feet to the step back up here of that top floor. And while the right-of-way along Hilliard is about 54 feet, what I would call the effective right-of-way, the building facade, our building facade, because of its step back to provide 10.5-foot sidewalks, as well as the step back across the street, we've got about 64.5 feet between each building facade. This is the rear elevation, and we're still working on some of this. Right now, what you see on the rear elevation is a section, I mean, for all intents and purposes, a section of the building cut away. And that is, that's indicative, let's see if I can get out of, that's indicative of the fact that while we are in the central business district, we are abutting a single family residential zoning. So there is a transitional height requirement back on the back side of the building. Right now, and as this facade is showing, we have, for all intents and purposes, kind of just sectioned off that portion of the building. Through subsequent conversations with staff, it potentially, for full compliance on that rule, we may have to section off additional, a little bit more of the building back here. The single family zoning by code, while this is the single family parcel here, if you measure it to the center of the right of way, then it starts pulling into a little bit here. But for all intents and purposes, the same ideology holds true. On the west side of the building, we've got the front along Hilliard. The rear, we do have areas of exposed parking, and we've got that kind of, the building has a little recess here to provide the required landscaping buffer that the code requires on that parking deck. And then finally, I've got, this is a kind of a perspective at that corner, the hot spot with Hilliard Avenue going this way, Ashland Avenue going this way, and seeing. I'll let Brian Slevar speak to a little bit about the ideas on materials, as well as the any other aspects of the articulation that Brian wants to speak to. And I just want to reiterate that I've encouraged Brian and to, you know, as we've already started the technical process for this project. I really had said that, you know, let's put together our initial ideas from the conversations and visions with the client, but not go too far before we got in front of this group to get some feedback with the idea that we can come back to you guys as and help evolve the shape and form of the building.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, we do work all over the place, and we always find that these opportunities to get in front of you guys for initial insight are helpful. We try to be pretty loose with our concepts in the beginning so that we can really glean what we would like from you guys on some feedback, and without really kind of taking too much time of our client. So we have a project here that, as Chris alluded to, has a tremendous amount of grade around it. It works great for the parking situations and the access out of Grove Street and onto Hilliard. And then part of our struggle has been the Hilliard elevation. As you can kind of see, that's probably the least developed there. We have commercial ground floor uses along probably that part, and then the corner where Chris was talking about the plaza area. But based on how we have to set our elevations for our 5 stories of apartments above it, it's really like we have to pick the worst possible spot to set some sort of a grade elevation. And there are pros and cons to all 4 corners of how we want to do that. Internally, what you can see is a combination of a 5/2 and a 5/1 podium building. So we have tried to address sort of these opportunities to step the building up and get our pedestrian level closer to the ground, as you kind of see as we wrap around the corner onto Ashland. Material-wise, I think a lot of what we're looking for are high-quality materials, maintenance-free materials. So we're looking at a lot of brick, metal panel, fiber cement paneling, and some sort of lap siding and things like that to kind of clean up the elevation. We've got, I believe, over 50% glazing on all the sides. We've tried to, because of the proximity of the right-of-way, to recess in the balconies slightly so that we're not overhanging into the right-of-way. We've tried to sort of treat the 2 elevations of Ashland and Hilliard a little bit differently to sort of react to the scale of those streets, and to also sort of capture some views that we like. I think one thing that's developed, Chris, if you want to flip back to the other elevations, our intention on the garage is not to leave it exposed. I think right now we're going to be beyond the ability to naturally ventilate this garage. So I think our intention will be to provide, we would like to provide some daylighting into it, but also it needs to be probably integrated more into the facade. And right now, what you're really seeing there is just the model cut of the slope of the ramp. So our intention is to develop that, and it sort of ties into what Chris was speaking about with the contextual edge and that chunk we've kind of taken out of the building right now, just for conversation's sake. We do have some. You can see the sort of there in that north or that south elevation view. We do have some units down there that I think we've tried to get some daylight into. Again, as we sort of balance this thing out with the grade elevations, there's, again, pros and cons to setting things at different elevations. And then our access back off of Grove Street for move-ins and maintenance and trash and all the good things that go with those types of buildings. So we'd love to get some feedback, answer any questions, and sort of continue this project forward.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the project team?
I promised Brian Slevar that you guys would have lots of comments.
Well,
Stephen Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe we could start with the site and then discuss, because this is such a big, large building, go into the architecture if y'all want. But Chris, we really appreciate you helping lead your out-of-town team and developer through this initial phase. And I think that the last project that your team brought through shows very clear evidence of how this can be a very productive process. That project is the previous one that you submitted right down the street. I think benefited greatly from this process, and y'all certainly made many adjustments to help make it a better project. On this site, I just have a couple of notes. This stretch of Hilliard, as y'all are all aware, is dramatically transforming. In a couple of years, we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of new pedestrians using this as a way to get into downtown. And I think that we've really got to begin thinking in those terms with what's happening to the west and to the north of this site, and just in the South Slope in general. I think this is a tremendous project, I think, for downtown. One thing, it looks like there's a pretty significant portion of power lines going underground, which is great. And we're also cutting out a large number of curb cuts on this. So this is really going to clean up the streetscape edge. My biggest concerns right now, and I know these are conceptual plans, but as the design moves forward, there are a number of existing trees on this site, and I know it's a downtown site. We're in the Central Business District. There are a number of them. I think it's like 5 or 6 that are located within the public right-of-way that I don't think at this level of development, you'll have to, on the checklist, I don't think you have to include trees to be removed, but there's some really significant trees along Ashland that are going to need to come out. And the first thing that pops into my head when I think about that happening downtown is just our continued issue with this heat island effect, urban heat island effect downtown. And it's a huge issue now, and it's becoming even a bigger issue. And with a project that has a structure that is so dominant on a parcel of land, I think the design has really got to respond to that. And on this project, given the vast amount of roof area, I think it's a fantastic candidate for a very extensive green roof system. Other projects in the recent past in downtown Asheville have found that to be favorable in helping them achieve some of their stormwater goals. The benefits are many, many, and I think that I would strongly encourage the designers to look at this carefully, and that is something that I would personally like to see. I think that my last comment is at the intersection of, you know what, I'm going to leave it at that. That's my biggest comment. This is a green roof site. This is a green roof opportunity, and I would really, really like to see it on this project. Well, that's going to be it for me.
Thank you,
Stephen Lee. Go ahead and talk about the corner. I know you want to. You or Catherine, somebody. Because it's not designed, right?
I can go ahead and ask a question about that. But before I jump into that, I wanted to follow up on what Stephen said, because I believe this project is located in an area of the city that was recently, as recent as 2019, listed as having the highest overall heat vulnerability in downtown. And so we also are seeing a trend in increased daytime land surface temperatures. So thinking about urban development, which we all know is a good idea, and understand that requires more impervious surface, less vegetation. But this type of development has community-wide impacts that extend beyond the site and the project itself in terms of stormwater, increased surface temperatures. So I think just to follow up on what Stephen's saying is there a way that we can mitigate those impacts through innovative stormwater management that lessens the impact on our public infrastructure that we all pay for, our beloved waterways, incorporating vegetation and trees to help reduce that land surface temperature, which not only makes our city more comfortable and more pleasant, but also reduces energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, improves air quality. So this is a really great opportunity to start thinking about these larger impacts and how we can be tackling them in a project by project basis that we all can enjoy the benefits of. So just want to make that point. And then what other point do I want to make? Is that, okay, so the intersection. So it's nice to see this project at the stage that it's at and have an opportunity to contribute and ask questions. So that intersection of Hilliard and Ashland, I drive by that intersection every single day, twice a day on my way to and from work. And that intersection is where motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians all converge and is an opportunity not only to improve or to provide a safe space for those folks and a safe corridor, but also to really enhance that public realm. So I think there's an opportunity to activate that corner. Within a relatively small radius, we have, let's see, middle school, city park, the YWCA, downtown, and over the course of the next several years, many, many more residents. So just thinking about how we can improve the quality of that, the pedestrian and street environment would be something I'd like to just note.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Does anybody else?
I can go.
Okay.
Let Christina go first.
I have a question. Hilliard Avenue, you said that there was commercial use on the bottom. In the elevation, it looks like there's windows, but there's no doors. What's happening on the first level of Hilliard Avenue?
Oh, yeah. So great question. That's something that we're working through that I think that is our biggest issue right now is we use the intersection as sort of our ground zero for that level. And there sort of appears to be like a story and a half version of down along Hilliard. And we've been thinking through with our client on some uses of that space. We've looked at like some WeWork spaces that these windows would serve as more clear stories or, chest level high windows due to the grades that we have there. And that was to try to get to when we get to the intersection that we're not submerged there or elevated above the pedestrian way. So what we're really trying to do, and I don't know that we're there yet, is to try to set the corner as what sets the datum for the whole building, and then how we transition up Hilliard without, either A, knocking our head on the balconies that are above it, or by the time we get to the driveway for the parking entrance, or to create this kind of like very uncomfortable corridor. But, obviously we do not want to have like solid walls there. So it's a little bit of a struggle with the grade and where we have the building, and we're trying not to create this big recessed courtyard that you look down on that just, builds up with leaves and trash and all kinds of things. So that first floor on Hilliard is our biggest challenge that we're working on right now.
Okay.
This shows, I guess, our design intent that we do want there to be windows and transparency and activity, but we're not quite there yet.
I have one thought while we're on this elevation on Hilliard. You said you're still working through that. And there's an opportunity, I think, where the garage entry is, because there's an angled wall there too, that piece be different, because it is. So that could be something you could play with, because, there's a garage entry there and an angled wall, and there's these white repetitive blocks, and that would be an opportunity to make a different one there.
Yeah, I agree.
I also have one question about the courtyard that you can see on the roof plan. How many stories deep is that?
So basically that goes down 5 stories from the top. So it goes down to our main podium level.
Okay.
So that all the units that are on that interior courtyard get daylight.
Okay.
I think our intention too is at that surface level would be an amenity deck, so there potentially could be a pool there or outdoor green space or something like that.
Okay. Brian, do you want to go?
Yeah, okay. So this is we spent a pretty fair amount of time on the other corner here of Hilliard, talking a lot about the length of that building and the articulation of the building and how it's broken up. And so as I look at this Hilliard elevation, we can I like a lot of the parts and pieces of this. I don't mind them. I like to see someone do a modern building of its time. The little kind of hipped element, the L-shaped element, some of that stuff. This corner is not right at all. It's like the way this L-shaped element has turned its back on that prominent corner really bothers me. It's just totally the wrong move. And then this Hilliard elevation, the way this is just a big long building. You've got just a complete flat datum up at the top. There's very little articulation and breaking up inside the building. I'm having a hard time with it. When I think of how that building presents itself and how it's going to be to walk beside it, I just don't like it at all. And I'm trying to think of something more articulate and constructive than that, but is this a key pedestrian street, Will, Sasha? I think it is.
Actually, both streets are key pedestrian.
I thought they were. And you don't have any real, I know we've got some grade changes. I know we've got some issues to deal with. Guys, we've got grade changes all over Asheville. And, when I walk up and down Biltmore Avenue or Lexington Market, any of them, got as much or more grade change. And this is difficult. I just don't like it.
Catherine.
I can work with, I don't like it. We can fix that.
Brian, I have a question. As you were working on this and thinking about Asheville, and like what inspired you about this building when you were thinking about designing a building in Asheville in terms of like the materials and the function and everything? Like just maybe learn a little bit more about the decisions that you're sharing, even though they're preliminary at this time.
Sure. I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina for 20 years, visited Asheville as often as I possibly could. We work with this client on a lot of projects in the Southeast. And I think that this site, with knowing the other developments that are going on along Hilliard, the potential gateway aspect to downtown that it brings, I think that our initial hope is to try to come up with a building that is worthy of this intersection for the amount of eyeballs that get put on it as people transition from the west into downtown. I think our idea was to sort of balance a little bit of what was going on across the street with their scale and their facade. We tried to take a little bit more of the historic element and try to find something. I don't know that we really found anything that wasn't just completely fake to try to throw up there to make some sense. We have some historians on staff that we had to do some research on this site and the buildings around it and downtown to try to come up with something. That's sort of how we started with the brick and the importance of the cornice. I think the previous comment about the L coming down and turning its back to the intersection is accurate. And I think that is what we're suffering with, how to deal with the grades in the corner. And I think in the essence of time, this is just what it became. I think we understand the importance of how this thing comes to the corner. We have, like Chris's site plan shows, quite a lot of right of way that we can do a lot of really great things to welcome people into that building. And that's really why we're pushing to make sure that our grade works, that we're at the right grade at that corner and not looking down or looking up at something. So I think we're really trying to press that pedestrian experience there at the corner. I agree, it's big. I think right now what we've really been working with is the developer and their, obviously their demand for units and parking and making all that work. And double loaded corridors and single loaded corridors are what they are as far as their mass and size. So we no doubt have to try to be a little bit more softer on our look, break it up some, and integrate some more. I'm hearing more, green passive design kind of elements that we certainly can start to take a look at. I think one of the things that we really focused on a lot with less about the design and more about the massing of it was the grades and how to make all that work.
So as a landscape architect, I appreciate all that, but I'm more concerned about the site, and that's because that's what I know. And I'll let Robin and Brian talk about the architecture. But right now, when I was looking at the comparison of impervious surface and like developed area as of now versus it's not like you're taking 50% and going to 100%. It's not a ton, but it is significant because we have so little of that in downtown. And as we continue to like shave off more and more the softscape and the landscape, we talked about heat. I was on my soapbox and climbing slowly off of it. But just to say that that's really important quality of downtowns. And for our downtown, it's really important in terms of stormwater too. And so just, Stephen Lee brought up the green roofs. That certainly could manage an enormous amount of stormwater in a very simple system, built up system, and not only help with stormwater, reducing peak flow and just general, quantity of runoff, but also really help to cool that building, which you will enjoy and your tenants will enjoy. Increased biodiversity within the city, really have a lot of co-benefits that Stephen Lee alluded to. That is something that the community will benefit from as well, and won't be a tremendous, impact for you either. So just starting to think about, ways that we can meet some of these challenges on the site, in the building. This is, you said it, you mentioned how prominent this building is. It's a real opportunity to start showing like how we should be doing things because it is a brand new project. So not to, make you responsible for everything, but just to say that it's a real opportunity here, and I'm excited to see what can happen.
And thank you, Catherine. And I'll add to that as it relates to stormwater, whereas the vast majority of redevelopment projects in the central business district find themselves exempt from the city's water quality and quantity because it's so built upon. This site, we do anticipate, and our technical plans that have been submitted anticipate some type of stormwater management for both quantity and quality on this. Currently there's an existing store pipe that kind of grabs Hilliard and bisects the property, and we're improving some of the infrastructure in the street, but we've looked at some sub below the courtyard and other areas where we'll have opportunities for stormwater control measures to do that before the water continues down the south slope. And as we move forward with this project, we'll be sure to highlight that for the continued conversation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we got Christina and then Brian.
Sorry. I just wanted to comment. So I think the general layout in this typology, it's sort of a wrap building, but it's not fully, you're not wrapping that side of the parking deck. But I think this general approach, it can be really insular. And I think that's one of the main issues that I have is you're creating this fortress that separates from the city or from the urban context. And I wonder if there's a way maybe to break up the building or have some connection from the street to the courtyard, or visual or actual. And also just not sure that these type of courtyards ever work. And one other comment, you mentioned having some pedestrian bike access on the west side, I think, where the parking deck is exposed. And I'm wondering if you talked about possibly having screens, or you mentioned that that elevation was in progress, but what are your ideas in terms of addressing that parking, which is not facing downtown, but still faces important part of the community, the park and residents?
I mean, I think one of the issues with the parking is if we don't go vertical with it, then we're going to be eating up all of the facade, the pedestrian level with it. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to have parking. So I think going vertical with it is one solution. I think if we can successfully put a facade on that, I guess the west side, then that, I realize it's not a true, good old Texas donut, but we tried to maximize the courtyard potential with just the physics of doing a parking deck, to try to preserve all that street frontage for real uses and not just parking cars.
Yep. And on the pedestrian level, we'll have landscaping to soften there. There's some opportunity as we go up. We'll coordinate with the client and with Brian, the architect, as to options as to whether I know on the last project we saw some kind of green screen in front of the parking structure that was exposed to the facade, or some of the other examples that we've seen around town, and continue that conversation.
Okay, Brian.
Okay, I'm ready for something more constructive. So I'm looking at the Ashland Avenue elevation on A500. The left-hand corner, I think, is more important than you're making it right now. It just kind of, the facade just kind of peters out and wraps around. I think that's an opportunity to figure out something to do, because as a lot of people enter downtown coming up Ashland, and I think that's an important corner to design. I like this I like this corner piece, the right-hand side of that piece, quite a bit. I like that more formal look of that piece with the L shape. And I think if you did some more pieces like that as it wraps around the corner, on the Hilliard Avenue side. See, one of the things I think I don't like about that Hilliard elevation is that it feels like it is a podium. It reads so much like a podium that I really feel like there's this huge chunk of building just that's just hovering but hasn't hit the ground yet, and it's about to crush it. And so if you take some of these pieces that you've got, start designing some different pieces. One, because I think it's just right now it reads too much like a big long block, and I think it needs some articulation, and I think they need to land. And as you start to land those things on the ground and engage the pedestrian, I think that's going to help a good bit. That's a little more constructive than I don't like it. There you go.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely more happy with the Ashland elevation than the Hilliard one for sure. So, appreciate your comments.
I think maybe if there were some rules on what happens when these parts hit the ground, it could acknowledge the change in grade a little better, instead of just the building slides in the hole and nothing changes as it hits the ground. That's the thought I have about that.
Nope, I agree.
Does anybody else have anything?
This was what I was hoping for. I really appreciate you guys' input to help. As Stephen Lee made reference earlier, we just watched and witnessed the success of this process on another project down a few blocks away, and how it evolved through coming to informal design review meetings. And appreciate y'all's time and input as we help guide our client forward on this project.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more item on the informal design review, and it is 72 Broadway Street, the Create project. And Jeremy, I'm going to step away for a couple of minutes. I'm going to hand the reins to you. I'll be back.
Lovely. Okay. I guess we're waiting for, are they here?
Yes, I believe we have Eric Howell and Warren Sugg, maybe some other folks too. Be glad to hand it over to them if they want to take the lead on this.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that. So if you'd like to, why don't you share your screen, Will, and we'll go from there. Can you go to the elevation, DRC, your first frontage, the Broadway elevation, DRC 013?
Sure. You might have gotten a notification too that I'm recording the meeting now. Our YouTube might have dropped off for the time being. So I want to make sure that I'm recording this, all the comment we get, so we know what everyone said today.
Okay. So what we did was really articulate the brick veneer and the soldier course and the banding around the building. And instead of doing a mimic to the Masonic arch, we did a corbelled squared arch at the entry point. But we wanted to do a nod to that architecture, but still maintaining our contemporary feel. So we're still using these large, windows, clean lines, asymmetry, and the mixed materials to represent that contemporary feel. We feel a lot better about how the project, the front elevation has come together. Peter and I, and I'm sorry that Peter couldn't join us today, but he had another meeting he had to attend to, and this is one of my coworkers, Josh. So what our main point of this is to get this facade to sort of align with all of the architecture that surrounds it and to be that gateway point coming up Broadway. And as you can see, we've sort of extended that entry sort of tower parapet a little bit higher as well. And there's a couple of renderings at the end of the project, Will, that some perspectives that you could view this entry a little bit more. And I can also, if I need to share my screen, I can do that and get you a better view of that entry point. There's also some brick reveal punches on the left-hand side where the existing parking is. Those could be made out of a different, similar brick material, but a different shade. None of these colors represent the exact material that we've decided on yet, but they basically tell you what the material is: brick and metal paneling and ephes, a portion of ephes. But I know all of you have seen this many times before, so we're hoping that we did a lot of good work between now and then.
Stephen Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Eric, at this stage, and I appreciate this this third review. It's very helpful in seeing how this has progressed. But at this stage, I would really, really like to be seeing what's actually happening on the public sidewalk. It's now even more important, I think, with the access for vehicles off of Broadway. For such a large, overwhelming building there at street level. I personally feel like it definitely, without doubt, requires more than just a sidewalk. up to the base of the building. I don't believe there are going to be any street trees right there. And I just think that this public space, the public sidewalk, the area in front of the building needs attention to detail at this point, just like you've done to the building. And my second comment is that I think you have a really great opportunity to do something very special and unique and really set the actual building off. And if you could go to the front perspective rendering, there you go, that's good. There are two, 1, 2, 3, it looks like third floor balconies. It's on the 50 level of your architectural plans, right there, from hotel rooms. I think there's a huge opportunity, especially that one that's on the northwest corner and the northwest and west line, to do some type of built-in spandrel planter or built-in planters for trees. I think it could really, if it's done correctly, it could be really dramatic and make a very special statement and set this building apart. So I would really like for y'all to strongly consider that. If these were condo balconies, I think it might be a little bit more restrictive. Not that it's going to take up space, but given that it's a hotel, I think that you got an opportunity to do something really spectacular there. So those are the two things I'd like to hear y'all focus on in the next submittal.
So noted. Thank you.
Brian?
Well, I like the first 3 or 4 floors much better than what we've seen previously. I like your little portal frame entry. I like the nod. I agree. The copy in the arch is probably that's probably a good move to nod to it, but not copy it. So I like that piece. I think you, Will, can you scroll up just a little bit, or whoever's driving this? So I think you probably did that, and I think that was a right move for massing, but man, that's not right. That's a lot of forehead on that guy. I don't know what to do there, but something needs to happen on that big element. I like that. I like the move, but there's just so much forehead. I don't.
Maybe just a little bit, some different articulation at the top, maybe above that header. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like what's going on there. Anyway, it's like you designed it and then you just like, well, I know it needs to be taller, so here we go. And then I'm struggling a little bit because so like you've got clearly defined pieces on, building up, and then even wrapping around, but then like the material changes. I can't figure out why material changes and what, and it's like there's this corner brick piece, and then it becomes the balcony, and then it's then it becomes the ephes, and then above that it's the whatever that is, cement fiber or metal panel. I don't understand what's going on very much with those. I don't know if anybody else is can see that the way I'm seeing it, but I just still feel like there's some material changes that feel a little arbitrary, and I don't know why they happen and when they happen, and why does the brick extend up and then it becomes metal panel at that line versus, I don't know. That piece is puzzling to me. In this elevation, and then there's the I think it does the same thing it makes more sense to me in a way. Flip to the 3D perspective northwest, DRC 019, that one. So like that piece makes more sense to me because it stops, but then it's got this weird little thing. Well, you can't see my marker. Where it wraps around, I don't know. There's just something odd about some of the material change when materials change. I feel like I still want to read separate buildings maybe in my head, and it feels like it's more like a jigsaw thing that's coming together instead of making sense of when you make breaks. That's the basis of what I've got right now.
I agree with Brian about the material change. I think that's what bothers me about it, that I couldn't put my finger on. One comment I'm going to make, and it may just be me. This brick piece that goes all the way up, I kind of want the windows in it not to be asymmetrical. I kind of, if you're going to nod to a traditional thing, I kind of want those windows to feel a little more traditional. I think for me, I think it would read better, but that's just, it's just been a thing that I've felt the whole time. So
True Chicago style, center,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
on each side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
yeah, so that's my comment.
We looked at different types of windows, and I anticipate that in the brick veneer, that will be a different style window than, say, in the metal panel facade. But I don't know that we've gone into too much investigation strategies, options of what those could be. But I will definitely write that down.
Stephen Lee.
Eric, I don't know did you see the previous review we did on the Hilliard project? Were you online?
I was in and out.
Okay. So I guess this is also a question for Ricardo and Robin and Brian, everybody else, Kate. Why not, with your stormwater? Well, let me ask you this, Warren. What are your stormwater requirements on this site? Or do you have any?
This one's got, this is one of the ones that's sort of the reverse of what we had before, where it's already more impervious than probably what we're going to end up with, or pretty close to equal.
Warren, were you on that 145 Biltmore project?
Yeah, a few years ago, you talking about?
Yeah, the right down the street on.
Yeah, 145.
Peter was on that too.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the green roof part of that, or?
No, not as much on that. Just some of the, I was kind of outlier on that one.
Okay. Reason I bring it up, Eric, is that our conversations in the project before, I think, directly apply to this. And I'm just bringing this up on each project that I think it applies to. And I'm not saying anything they don't, but curious if the other members have comments. But why not have a very substantial green roof on this project, given heat island effects in this urban location? This water from this building goes directly into a storm sewer that then directly goes to the most polluted waterway in all of Buncombe County, and that is Reed Creek. And my question is, why not have it on this building?
And Stephen Lee, Kate did 145 Biltmore, so she may be able to give you some more insight onto that. We've worked with living roofs on a lot of green roofs in town. Garage apartments, 145 Biltmore, this building, 12 South Lexington, was one of the original ones. So we will definitely revisit the idea for sure. And if we can get that into the owner's budget, we would be happy to do that, but we'll definitely need to verify those instances.
And I think that in addition to all of our, we all work with clients as well, in addition to owner budget, we have a very special job we have to do on this committee right now. And we've got to feel comfortable about what's moving forward, especially with hotels like this, even though this is somewhat mixed use. But I think it's extremely important to reiterate the necessity of, for one, the approval of this group, but also how dramatically, what the dramatic impact might be to public opinion with this project if you had a functional green roof on it. That's my only comment. I'm glad to hear that, Kate, it sounds like y'all worked on 145, so y'all might be able to, you may be able to help answer some questions on this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to. And yes, the 145 Biltmore project, and I want to take this opportunity to just distinguish between, we talk about green roofs and we all think of the same thing typically, but there's a lot of different ways to build them and design them. And so the difference between the 145 Biltmore project, that was what we call a utility green roof. It's up there not for anyone to look at. It's not an amenity, it's not decoration, it's strictly up there to help with stormwater and all the other co-benefits that I talk about too much. So that was, we use an overseeding, a plug system. So it's a lot more affordable than like a pre-vegetated or tray system. You don't put a copper gutter on every single project. You select that out. So it's the same thing when we think about green infrastructure and green roofs. So I think that there is an opportunity here, and we were so thrilled about the 145 Biltmore project. We came in at the end. I mean, I think we consulted a little bit on the design, but we mostly built it. Is that we're doing this everywhere but Asheville. We're seeing this. The reason that all these other municipalities are incentivizing green roofs and mandating them in some ways isn't because they love them. It's because it makes economic sense for their cities in terms of infrastructure. It makes environmental sense. So just to say that we should start thinking about these as true building systems and infrastructure. And if we want to make them accessible and an amenity, we can do that too. But to Stephen Lee's point, the stormwater impacts on this could be tremendous. The garage apartments green roof, 6,200 square feet of green roof, that has 100% volume and peak flow reduction for every small storm. So 0 water is coming off that roof. We're looking at volume reductions up to 87% compared to a conventional roof. That's a lot of water. And just through evapotranspiration alone, and this is specific to garage apartments. So I want to brag on this a little bit, especially because Eric's here, is that these are true numbers. These aren't just hypotheses. We ran stormwater calculations. So we're looking at almost 120,000 gallons of stormwater that don't enter the public storm drain and enter our streams just through evapotranspiration alone. So these are significant numbers, and we need to start looking at this and taking this a little bit more seriously, as opposed to, let's throw a green roof up on here. It might be nice to look at. Let's really start thinking of these things as systems.
And just to let all the members,
soapbox.
and just to let all the members know that all of these projects, these are, MHA Works, Peter Albert's sort of projects too. So it is important to us as well, to be honest with you. So.
Well, and on a not related to this project and specifically, but I'd be interested in the committee discussing the fact that any hotel within the central business district, every single one should consider a green roof on their building. Just a thought. Thanks.
Thanks. Ricardo.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to the architecture a little bit. I absolutely agree. I think it's a great point on the green roof discussion. That's especially this type of project it's a great opportunity. But I'm going to turn it back to the architecture a little bit. You mentioned that you had done a lot of work, and I have to be honest, I just don't see it. I see the changes along the base, but other than that, the only thing that I'm looking at the previous submission right next to the current one, and the only real difference I see is there's some banding in the brickwork, and then that lower portion of the front facade. Personally, I struggle with that a little bit because I understand why the parking garage moved. I think it's a shame, but if there's no way around it, there's no way around it. And to Brian's point about like the jigsaw nature of this, I think that to me the word is frenetic. It's a little frenetic, and I think you would benefit from setting some rules as to how the materials come together, where the materials come together. There's a really interesting potential here in the parts and pieces of this building that can really help you to set rules and, you know, make the design better. Couple of things, like for example, along that front, that base, you know, it's you have a small threshold, you know, moving, you know, left to right, you have a small threshold into the retail, then you've got the retail window bumped out, then you got the big entrance into the garage, then you have a deep recess for the entry, and then it goes back out. You know, could all of that move back to at least, you know, like take the line, you know, the living space line, and normalize that across that, so that, you know, at least a sense of that gaping, you know, as far as I'm concerned, gaping wound that is the entry to a parking garage, at least that gets a little bit of, you know, blends in a little bit better by having more depth, more you know, more spatial depth along that front, that whole front. And then going up, you know, to floors 3 and 4, there's 2 balconies there. Is there an opportunity there? And I know I looked at the floor plan, and I know how that unit is laid out. So I know that you're trying to come into the living room, and then you've got the dining room and the kitchen beyond, which is the natural way to enter an apartment or a room, you know, the space, whatever. But is there an opportunity there to flip that, so you can take that, you know, that balcony and actually push it against the vertical element, to allow that vertical element to get, you know, a little bit more expression. And I don't know what that, you know, what happens when you look at the other side once you do that, but that, I think, you know, those are my comments. I think the biggest thing is that I think it needs some rules. Get a system of rules in place, and let that, because it has a lot of opportunity for that. You know, like I said, lots of recesses, lots of planes, and, you know, moving in and out. So you can really clarify that if you apply a set of rules. And that's all I have.
Okay. If no one else has any comments, then we can move on to the next agenda item, which is future discussion.
Chair, we do have a
public
commenter. Yeah. I'll go ahead and bring them in.
Thanks.
Hey, good morning, everyone, or afternoon. This is Brian Goldman, attorney in Asheville. I spoke a few meetings ago when this was again up for consideration in informal review. I just first want to thank the committee for letting us speak at this time. I do represent the folks that own property at 52 Broadway, so just up the street, just a little bit south of 72 Broadway. And thanks to architects for modifying that main entrance off of Broadway Street from the back alley. Again, I just want to reiterate that we don't think that the access up the alley is appropriate nor legal in the sense of rights. That the hotel sits on a couple of lots, 3 in particular, lots 7 or 8 and 9, and then a big lot number 3. The access, the deeded access that lot 3 has, not only off of Broadway, is through a 10-foot alley behind the Masonic Temple. And so I do appreciate that they are changing, the architects have indicated that they're changing that alleyway access to just a service entrance. I still don't think that they've got the legal right to do it. And moreover, and more importantly, is that's not a city maintained public alley and or street. There is no Powell bill funding that the city gets to maintain that street. The Powell bill funds money to municipalities so that they can maintain, repair, and construct streets. It also is for the benefit of traffic control. And so without the funding, the city will be able to do in that alleyway. And of course, traffic control is going to be important when you're exiting and entering that site. And so again, I want to thank the architects for that. I'm happy to talk to them further, but I would hate to, my clients don't have any opposition to the development, but do have an opposition to the use of anybody through that alley to access the hotel. And so as that is part of a design element, I thought it would be appropriate to comment about that at this time. And so that's where my comments are, is basically the legal hurdles that the developer would have to go through to gain access through that alleyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody else have any comments, or do we want to move forward? Okay, let's move on to future discussion topics. Would anybody like to bring up any discussion topics? Okay, then yes, Ricardo.
Do we have any information or any movement or any plan on updates to the design guidelines? I know we've talked about that stuff in Downtown Commission. We talked about it here as well, how they're outdated. And I've reading through some of them, I'm seeing things that are actually in conflict with some of the things that we're talking about these days. For example, the uplighting. There's something in the design guidelines that talks about uplighting of trees and things like that. And of course, dark skies, we're trying to move away from that. But is there something that we can do to move it forward? Is there something that we can, I don't know, that's my question.
Yeah, and as staff, I don't have an update at this time. I know it remains a priority to update both the downtown design guidelines and the Riverfront district design guidelines. I can check with our director and get back to you about what might be a feasible time frame. But obviously, it's something that everyone agrees is a priority. Then we can start, I think, making some progress on it. It might take a while, so might as well get started sooner than later on it.
Right.
But definitely understand that as a priority for the committee to start working on that.
I have a quick question. Has anyone on the committee participated in the boards and commission restructuring meetings?
I went to an original, just informational meeting.
I know Brian has as well. He's not here, but he has through the Downtown Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent around that invite for the open house in early May. Is that what's going on?
Just curious if someone was going. I haven't been able to make them, so just wanting to be sure that someone from our committee at least was participating.
I plan on attending for that meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, May 5th at noon to 1:30 is their I guess we're calling it a kickoff meeting for this kind of public or the pilot aspect of it. I guess they've had some meetings before, but
Okay. Well, Christina, if you end up being the only person that goes, you can report back to us what you find.
Will do.
All right, and if nobody else has anything, then we can adjourn. And thanks for hanging out for this long meeting today, you guys. See you next time.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.